be gay in Hollywood, you never expected. They be having these big ass mansion parties, and the mansion party, the whole mansion is a party, and then it's a separate party in the little rooms. I ain't been famous that damn long. I'm excited in a month to be at the mansion party. You be looking at all the damn rooms, and you around and look in the wrong room. And
I happen to think there's a gay mafia in hip hop.
Right.
Not rappers, you know, the editorial presidents of magazines, the PDs at radio stations.
The ritual of Baphomet, the transgender. To show allegiance to him, you had to kiss his ass ring.
Really?
And it said both of those things.
Fat Joe once cracked up on camera saying, "The gay mafia runs hip hop." Now look at him, tangled in a federal RICO lawsuit accusing him of running a freaky cult with hidden cameras, blackmail threats, and forced acts that sound like they came straight out of Diddy's playbook. The dude suing him even claimed Joe learned all these dirty tricks from Diddy himself. And when you start digging deeper, it gets even nastier. Same lawyers, same court, same shady patterns, same hush-hush silence. But here's where it flips. Way before the blogs ever touched this mess, Katt Williams already tried to tell us. He sat with Joe Rogan and spilled everything. The rituals, the symbols, the dresses, the weird B-fat codes, Hollywood puppet masters, and the rise of the trans agenda, all pieces of some ancient playbook. Katt said the elites were running this circus right in front of us, and now look back at Joe. Always loud, suddenly quiet, same patterns, same power players, same crooked script. And if Katt was telling the truth about everything else, maybe this ain't just karma, maybe it's punishment coming down hard. It all kicks off with a bombshell so loud most folks don't even know how to process it. On K-Club, when Katt Williams pulled up, he didn't tiptoe, he kicked the door wide open. When he said P. Diddy be wanting to party, he wasn't just cracking jokes, he was pulling the curtain back on something way darker. A pattern, a power structure, an agenda in plain sight. But here's what most people missed. That clip wasn't just about Diddy. That was Katt firing the first warning shot, sending a signal to Hollywood that this so-called gay cabal wasn't finished with its games. Katt has always been the joker, dropping too much truth in his jokes. But in 2024, he ditched the clown act and came out swinging for real. The one thing Katt keeps calling out is those Hollywood rituals, B-fat codes, and the dresses they keep pushing on straight black men, submission and obedience. This wasn't just some trendy industry nonsense to Katt. He saw it as initiation rites and psychological branding to turn people into puppets, and he was sick of watching it happen. Now flashback to Fat Joe in 2011. He's chilling on Vlad TV, looking relaxed while dropping something way too real for that era.
It's owned. The hip-hop community is most likely owned by gay, to be honest with
But
you.
you think they'll be...
They're owned by gay. I happen to think there's a gay mafia in hip-hop.
Right.
Not rappers. You know, the editorial presidents of magazines,
Sure.
the PDs at radio stations, the people who give you award at award shows. This is a fucking gay mafia, my man.
Folks just laughed it off back then, calling Joe messy. But now that same Joe is locked in a lawsuit that could wreck everything he's built, and suddenly nobody's laughing. Joe said words back then that might have set all of this in motion.
They are in power. So why wouldn't a guy come out and say, yo, I'm gay, and get that type of love? I mean, Lady Gaga, I don't know if she's gay, but she running with that gay shit for real. And she is winning.
So,
Rap music, nah, it ain't no different. Everybody got somebody gay in their house, in their family. I'm not saying in their same house, but in their family, somebody got somebody gay. So I think it's 2011 going on 2012. I think if you're gay, rep your set.
Back then, Joe was untouchable, a Bronx legend with respect everywhere. But that moment painted a target on his back, and Katt was paying close attention. Later, Katt confirmed what many were scared to say. The industry has an invisible ceiling, a glass gatekeeping network that blocks you unless you play along. The gay mafia wasn't just about being gay, it was about allegiance, submission, blackmail. And that's the part most people still ain't ready to face. It's all about who owns your silence and who's holding the dirt on you. Then Fat Joe said what he said.
So, you know, you got guys who I don't think are gay, but they painting their nails or they walking with Birkin bags, you know. Like, it just seems like, yo, that's the way, you know, unfortunately, it's sad. You have originators, right? And then you have a lot of running with the swag or running with the style.
And just like that, he put a target on his back. But here's where it gets deep and real disturbing. For years, folks brushed off Katt's talk about Hollywood rituals, calling it conspiracy talk. But when you start piecing together everything Katt's been saying, it all points to the same twisted game. B-fat symbolism, duality, masculinity swapped out for femininity, external transformation used as a form of submission. And who else got caught up in this? Fat Joe, the same man who once said there's a gay mafia in hip hop, now getting pulled into that world, and it ain't on some casual vibe either. Now let's circle back to Katt. Here's something wild. A creator pointed out during that Club Shay Shay interview that Katt Williams was wearing a ship's helm pendant around his neck. This wasn't just some flashy piece. The ship's wheel is ancient symbolism. It stands for guidance, direction, and holding your own path, even when everything around you is straight chaos. In Buddhism, it's tied to the wheel of Dharma, a symbol for right action, right speech, and right purpose.
Katt Williams showing this helm, okay, during the times where we're all wandering, lost at sea, and he's saying, take your hands by the wheel, like take control of the wheel of your life. Like, and he's proudly demonstrating this to us, which again, everybody needs to start really getting into their spiritual journey, because this is a spiritual warfare that they're using.
So when Katt showed up rocking that pendant, it wasn't about fashion, it was spiritual warfare. While the world feels lost at sea, Katt's gripping the wheel saying, I'm not letting them drive me. I'll drive myself. And when you line that up with what he's been saying about industry control, it clicks. This wasn't random, it was coded. Then on Joe Rogan, Katt dropped another bomb. He predicted that the trans agenda wouldn't just stay a political movement, it would get forced into every media outlet, and not to celebrate diversity, but to create chaos, confusion, and
I don't care how people feel about the ritual. It's about just following the ritual work. Yeah. And so you can fool yourself into thinking there isn't one, but the evidence will be clear. So like when I be like, all these guys are wearing dresses, everybody's like, oh, he keeps talking about people wearing dresses. No, it's not like that. Look at it from a different way. Look at it. Show me one person that ever wore a dress in Hollywood unsuccessfully. That's how you understand what a ritual is.
It's a gender blur that lets Hollywood mess with identity and force people into self-submission.
20 years ago, I knew that transgenders was gonna be a thing. It wasn't because I was a prophet. It's just I had gotten so much information that I understood that things are secular. So I understood that the earliest I had seen that word transgender was Baphomet, the transgender.
And that B-fat symbolism, it's not just creepy goat statues, it's about male and female merging, wiping out the natural order.
And so I knew that in the ritual of Baphomet, the transgender, to show allegiance to him, you had to kiss his ass ring.
Really?
And it said both of those things. So I knew that both of those things will become popular in the future. And that somehow calling people the goat would be normalized over the sheep being always the most popular reference.
Right in front of us, Katt tied this straight to the gay cabal controlling who wins and who gets shut down in the industry. Now think about Fat Joe again, a man who used to run his mouth about gay control in hip-hop, suddenly going dead silent, suddenly hugging political causes while getting hit with lawsuits that mirror the exact same patterns we've seen play out before. It starts to feel less like a coincidence and more like a correction. Katt didn't name drop Fat Joe directly, but the message was loud. If you speak on the rituals, the Cabal will handle you. And now Joe's getting handled. A multi-million-dollar RICO lawsuit dropped in federal court. And honestly, it's giving everything Katt Williams warned us about.
New at noon, rapper Fat Joe is being accused of sex acts with minors in a $20 million lawsuit. The rapper's real name is Joseph Cartagena. The man described as his hype man, Terrence T.A. Dixon, claims Cartagena, quote, had coercive labor exploitation, financial fraud, sexual manipulation, violent intimidation, and psychological coercion, end quote. Well, in a statement, Fat Joe's lawyer said this is an attempt to deflect attention from the civil suit Fat Joe filed first against Dixon.
The docs lay out how Fat Joe allegedly used emotional manipulation to break people down while keeping his public image squeaky clean, all while doing wild stuff behind the scenes. The lawsuit even claims he exploited underage girls while making sure everything was under constant watch. This wasn't just messy behavior, it was about control. Straight up fear tactics. And the craziest part, Katt low-key called this out years ago. Now here's where it stops feeling spooky and starts sounding like a recycled movie script. Because the lawsuit against Fat Joe doesn't just sound familiar, it reads like a direct remix of the Diddy RICO file. Terrence Dixon wasn't just some random in Fat Joe's circle. He was his hype man, personal assistant, business partner, insider, all of that. Yet after decades, Dixon filed a federal civil RICO lawsuit, and he wasn't just talking about unpaid money. He was screaming betrayal, blackmail, and dual exploitation happening under Fat Joe's watch, and allegedly, sometimes with his participation. But pay attention here. The key ain't just the wild allegations, it's the structure. Just like the lawsuit spinning around Diddy, Dixon's case is built on the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO. They don't use RICO for petty beefs. They use it to take down crime families. So why is the government letting these celebrity power circles get framed like organized crime rings? Because that's exactly what they're starting to look like. Dixon claims Fat Joe was running a complex network of shell companies, artists, and employees to pull off illegal activities like theft, intimidation, emotional abuse, and public deception. Sound familiar? It should, because Cassie, Rodney, Lil Rod Jones, Don Montgomery, and others said nearly the exact same thing about Diddy. Now let's break it down line by line, starting with financial grooming. Lil Rod said Diddy would buy him gifts, give him stacks of cash, and control where he lived to keep him in check. Now Dixon claims Fat Joe promised him co-ownership of businesses, then cut him out cold, lied about contracts, had secret puppet signers on deals. Next up, coercion and surveillance. Diddy allegedly had Lil Rod tracked by security teams, followed him around, and set up cameras all over his properties. Dixon claims Fat Joe used bodyguards to intimidate him and once set up a friendly home visit that felt more like a shakedown. Then there's the abuse of power. Cassie says Diddy used his status to lure and manipulate younger women. And while the details vary, the pattern is the same. Promise people opportunities, trap them in financial dependence, isolate them, control them, and threaten them if they ever talk. This ain't just drama, it's a playbook. And Fat Joe's lawsuit is looking like a mirror image of the Diddy RICO file, exposing how the same blueprint of control and silence keeps getting recycled in the industry. Dixon says Fat Joe surrounded himself with underage girls, manipulated artists, and played savior while cutting folks out of the profits. This ain't just backroom deals, it's media-assisted gaslighting. The industry helped hide the mess because that's what the Cabal does. It doesn't have to silence everyone, it just needs to own the cameras. Now check who's been orbiting around Fat Joe these past few years. Kamala Harris, after Joe publicly backed her campaign, spoke on social justice and showed up at high-level fundraisers. Rock Nation. Joe's been pulling up at Jay-Z affiliated events, Clive Davis parties too. And let's not forget the revolt-linked circles. Plus, Joe's been seen around Puff's old crew. Same stylists, same handlers, same PR people. So you're telling me he's in the same rooms with the same execs, facing the same type of lawsuits, and it's all random? Nah. And here's what nobody talks about. When Fat Joe's lawsuit first dropped, there was no mainstream media frenzy, no emergency press conferences, no PR team scrambling to clean it up. Why? because this story wasn't supposed to blow up. Unlike Diddy, Joe still has protection. The Cabal ain't done with him yet. Maybe it's because Joe's more obedient. Maybe he knows when to shut up. Or maybe they're making him into an example for everyone watching. But behind the scenes, let's talk about Dixon. This dude ain't just some salty hater with a grudge. Dixon was on the inside for 20 plus years. He knew Joe's passwords, travel plans, finances, all of it. He helped run Terror Squad, handled bookings, cleaned up artist drama, kept everything moving, and now, out of nowhere, Dixon scrubbed off socials. Videos buried, media outlets not even naming him. They're trying to erase him. And that silence, that's not normal. It's strategic. It's a disappearing act straight out of the Diddy playbook. And that's terrifying because when people challenge the structure erases them. They don't need to win the case. They just need the story to die quietly. But here's the twist. Dixon's case is catching heat now because of the timing. The Diddy scandal cracked open the floodgates, and Katt's interviews gave people the language to describe what they've been seeing for years. What used to sound like conspiracy now feels like evidence. So here's the million-dollar question. If Fat Joe was protected by the same gay cabal he once warned us about, is that protection wearing off? Because here's what we're seeing. Joe's been real low-key in public lately, dodging interviews, refusing to speak on the lawsuit, going ghost on addressing any of it. Industry insiders stopped reposting him. His name quietly vanished from upcoming political campaigns and nonprofit boards. Even Katt hinted that once the ritual window closes, they either absorb you or sacrifice you. So, what does that mean for Joe now? If the Cabal is done using him, do they just let him rot? Or do they bury him completely so nobody else starts asking questions? We're about to find out, and let's state the obvious. If these same allegations dropped on anybody else, it would be wall-to-wall headlines. But somehow, this lawsuit against Fat Joe barely made a ripple. No BuzzFeed breakdown, no YouTube exposés, no front page media buzz, nothing. And that's not by accident, it's by design. Because when the industry protects somebody, they don't just send lawyers, they send PR suppressors, media blockers, influencer silencers, digital cleanup crews. They erase the story before it catches fire. And that silence is louder than any headline. Now compare this to how fast and vicious the Diddy headlines spread. Why? Because Diddy was no longer useful to the system. Let's talk strategy. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Look at Diddy. First, he quietly paid off settlements behind the scenes. Then he distanced himself from his label right before it fell apart in public. A few lawsuits got pushed out just enough to make it look like there were consequences. The industry spun it as just Diddy, framing him as the lone bad apple, while everything else stayed intact. They replaced the face, but the structure never changed. Now zoom in on Fat Joe. His situation feels eerily similar, just moving slower and quieter. Allegations dropped, but Joe kept popping up in public, smiling for cameras. His team didn't deny anything outright, but quietly shifted his schedule in the background. He started fading off political stages and brand deals with zero real explanation. And even though more people were allegedly involved, no other lawsuits followed, just the one from Dixon, who's being minimized and painted as desperate. Meanwhile, Joe's name is slowly getting scrubbed from upcoming projects. The cleanup is happening right in front of us just like it did with Diddy. The only difference? This time, they're doing it with the volume turned all the way down. And it's probably because Joe still hasn't publicly said the wrong thing. The deeper you dig, the clearer it gets. This story ain't just about Fat Joe. It's about who made it possible for people to notice in the first place. And what makes Katt different from everyone else who tried to blow the whistle? He's got nothing left to lose. He's independent. He's too viral to cancel and too smart to discredit. Katt can't be silenced, and that's why he's dangerous to the system. That's what makes Katt dangerous to the system. Here's the real paranoia. Is Fat Joe being taken down or cleaned up? Because the industry doesn't just toss people aside anymore. They repackage them. They erased Chrisette Michele for singing at Trump's inauguration, but they kept protecting artists accused of abuse for years. They turned Kanye into the villain, but let Travis Scott headline the Super Bowl. They let some fall while saving others, based on how useful they still are. And that's what's scary about Joe's lawsuit, because it's not clear which lane he's in. Is the Cabal testing if he'll stay obedient, or has he already been marked for disposal? Either way, what happens next will show how deep this machine really runs. Now let's bring it back to Terrence Dixon, because right now, Dixon's invisible. That's not normal. This man should be everywhere, talking, dropping interviews, going viral, but he's not. There's talk that Dixon struck a deal behind the scenes, or maybe got threatened into silence because the last person who tried to sue one of these big dogs, their story disappeared, and so did they. If that's true, if Dixon's silence was forced, if Fat Joe's lawsuit gets swept away, and if Katt's warnings get forgotten, then the system wins again. And we won't hear the full story until it hits the next rapper who speaks too loud. But it's not over yet, because another name just got pulled into this mess. And unlike Joe, they're fighting back in the open, on camera. And what they're revealing might show how deep this web really goes. You're not ready for what's coming next? Stay tuned.